Yes, sir, you are audible.
Thank you, Nutma. Okay, in the last lecture, we had discussed about like how would you construct different kinds of ensembles, and we discussed like the different strategies in which you can combine different ensembles. So we had covered enumerating the hypothesis, where the idea is merging different ensembles by the use of soft voting. Then you already know about bagging. So bagging, boosting, cross-validated committees, stacking, they all come under manipulating the training examples. I'll discuss some of them today. Uh, Manipulating the input features. So specifically, when you talk about feature bagging, so manipulating the input features is one such example. I mean, what you could choose. Yeah, even so, random forest is one such example of a classifier where you build multiple decision trees, where each decision tree can be built by choosing or I would say a subset of your features of your training set. Okay. Then we had also discussed about like how would you manipulate the output targets. We were actually on this last point where we were talking about injecting randomness. So I told you about like some of the researchers have really tried like injecting some kind of noise. It could be Gaussian noise, or it could follow some other distribution. But the idea is if you can inject some amount of noise and generate different classifiers. So those classifiers, they tend to work better than if you just use the training set as it is. Okay, now I would, okay, let me just give you one more example. So if you talk about neural nets, so assume that I'm interested in making a ensemble of different neural networks. So in the case of, I mean, neural nets, what you could imagine is that if I start with different initialization weights, so those different initialization weights actually are serving or actually are doing some kind of randomness to lead to different local minimas. And I will end up getting different classifiers altogether. Okay, you would have studied decision trees. So in the context of decision trees, rather than choosing, say, the attribute which has the highest information gain at the root, why shouldn't I choose, say, some attribute at random in order to split the tree? So randomized, so let me just write it down. Neural networks with, you can say, different initialization weights. So you can choose multiple neural nets in order to create an ensemble. Similarly, if you talk about decision trees, instead of choosing the best candidate amongst your attributes to split the decision tree at a particular level, what you could do is you could choose a node or you could choose a feature randomly to split the tree. So rather, I would say this is the randomized version of decision trees. Okay, and I have already discussed that you can also add some amount of noise in your input features. So these are some of the possible strategies where you can inject some randomness to ensure that your final classifier or your final prediction from these different classifiers, it is actually better than what you would have if you just used a single classifier with the original training set. Okay. Now, moving onwards. So you would have already studied about bagging. So you would have, I have been told that Dr. Arya has covered random forest. So the idea is, I'm just going to give you a quick recap here. So what you do is you do two kinds of bagging. One is called as feature bagging. and another is called as instance bagging. So random forest, as you know, is an ensemble of decision trees. So basically, what you do is you are constructing multiple decision trees. So let me say that there are, say, 5 decision trees. This is just an example. So in each decision tree, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to choose a subset of my training data, and or rather, I would say choose a subset of my original data set to construct each tree. Now, for each tree, what I can do is I can select, say, if there are n samples, basically, if there are n rows in my data set, and if there are d features, basically d attributes. So let's say for constructing D1, if I choose, say, a subset of these n samples, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pick these samples with a replacement. So let's say I'm still picking k samples, but these samples are picked with replacement. So basically, there can be certain redundancy in terms of the dataset samples that you have. And after picking these k samples with replacement, I'll construct my decision trees. So for each of these trees, what I've done is I've taken a partition of your data and built these decision trees. So this is called as instance bagging. So this means that instead of choosing the entire data set to build each tree, what you do is you pick a chunk of your data and construct that tree. Now, in case of feature bagging, what you do is that, so instead of picking all the D features to construct one decision tree, you choose, say, D prime number of features, where D prime is, say, something less than D, and construct each tree. So that is the idea of how you induce like feature bagging while creating random forest. Now, coming back to, say, let me just drop this one. So coming back to the next topic, which is like cross-validated committees. I'll be a little quick here because we have been doing ensemble learning for the last two days. I have to finish this topic today. Okay, so coming back to cross-validated committees, I hope you know what cross-validation is. If not, let me know. I'll explain it again. So I'm presuming that you know cross-validation. Okay, so what you do is that, so assume this is your original data set. And what you're going to do is that you're going to split this data set into, say, k equal halves. So I'll call it, say, k equal halves. So you can have, say, up to k different partitions. Now, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to construct k different classifiers. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to construct classifier 1, classifier 2, up to k different classifiers. And how these classifiers would be trained? So let's say if I talk about classifier 1, so for classifier 1, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick partition 1, partition 2, up to partition k minus 1 to train this data set. And the partition, or basically the kth partition, would be used as the, you can say, the test set. So this is how you will construct classifier 1. So you can imagine that you are going to leave one partition as the test set and all other partitions for the training set. So similarly, if you talk about classifier 2, or rather a simpler way would be, let me just say, an easier way to represent this would be, let me just say I use the first partition as the test set. And whatever other partitions are there, I'll use them in the training. So I'm only using one partition in the train set. Oh, sorry, one partition in the test set, and all other partitions which are there, those will be used for training. Similarly, if I talk about C2, I'll be using the second partition as the test set. So basically, if you look at the index I, so for Ci, the ith partition will be used as the test set, and all other partitions will be used as the training set. And this is how you can combine multiple different classifiers. So the idea is leveraged from cross-validation. Okay, now coming to boosting. Okay, Just let me wrap this now. If something is not clear, you can unmute yourself and let me know. Okay. So talking about boosting, so let's say this is your original data set. I'm just giving an example here in order to make it clear to you guys. So assume that you, in your original data set, you have say 5 samples. So I have say 5 different samples. So in boosting, what you do is that you basically assign a weight to each of the training samples. So for each of these training samples, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're going to assign some weight. So when you start this process, each sample gets assigned equal weight. And because there are 5 examples in your training set, so what you do is that you simply take 1 by n, where n is the number of examples. So in this case, 1 by 5 would be the weight for each training example. So what you have done is you have started this process by assigning some weight to each of the samples in your training set. Okay. Now, it's the same idea, like how you do, I mean, instance bagging. Okay, so imagine this. So what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to construct these buckets based on the weights that I have. So look at this. So the very first bucket that you will see would be from 0 to 0 to basically 1 by 5 is 0.2. So the very first bucket that would be there would be from 0 to 0.2. The next bucket that you see would be from, you can say 0.2 onwards. So, and I'm going to add the next weight to it. So from 0.2 to 0.4. Similarly, the next bucket would be from 0.4 onwards to 0.6. So there are like 4 different, I would say 5 different buckets. So there are 5 different buckets. So based on these 5 different buckets, I'm going to construct your first base classifier. Basically, so in bagging, what you did was you chose certain, so specifically talking about instance bagging, for creating each classifier, you try to pick each sample with a replacement. So the idea is still the same, where you're saying that each sample has equal weight. So the probability that each sample gets picked is 1 by n if there are n training examples. So this is what I have done. So this is just like similar to, so far this is very similar to instance bagging. Now imagine that you have say a random point generator, a random number generator, and this random number generator generates a number from 0 to 1. Okay, so this random number generator generates a value from 0 to 1. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use this random number generator to construct the training set for my first base classifier. So for my first base classifier C1, I'm going to, let's say, any doubts so far? If you have any doubts, you can unmute yourself and discuss with me. Okay, so we are going to build our first base classifier. So for our first base classifier, let's say we are interested in taking, say, n examples. Perhaps you can say, let me just take, say, 5 examples only. So I am not actually picking all these 5 examples to build this training set. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to use this random number generator. So I'm going to use this random number generator to construct my training set. So how do I select the first example for my classifier C1? So imagine that this random number generator gives me a value, say 0.3. So this random number generator gives me a value between 0.1. So the very first number that it generates is 0.3. So this 0.3, as you see, falls under the second bucket. So because this falls under the second bucket, what you're going to do is that you're going to use the second sample as your as one of the samples for your classifier. Similarly, what you're going to do next is that you use this random number generator again. Let's say it generates 0.45. So this falls under the third bucket. So you use the third sample to construct, you use the third sample in for building the classifier C1. Now, let's say the next number which is getting generated is 0.35. So 0.35 falls under the second bucket again. So you use the second sample again. So this is how you construct a training set for your classifier 1. Now, it is possible that you would see a 4 and a 1 there. Now, look at this training set. You have certain repetitions here. Obviously, there would be repetitions because you are using like instance bagging to generate. So the idea is you're using this funda of like samples with a replacement. So you would see certain repetitions in your training set. So let's say for C1, I have these 5 examples in my training set. OK, so what I did was I trained a model. Let me just say what I'm going to do is that I'm going to train a decision tree. So with those 5 examples, I'm going to build a decision tree. OK, so just remember that similar to how we did bagging, we actually didn't create the, I would say, the fully grown decision tree. We just created decision stumps. So in this case also, we are going to build a weak learner. So the classifiers C1 that you see would be a weak learner. So using these 5 examples, let's say, so in this particular case, let's say there are 4 features. So there are 4 features in my training set. So in order to create, say, the first split of your decision tree, what you're going to do is that you're computing, say, information gain from these 4 features, and whichever feature gives you the highest information gain, you use that particular feature to split the decision tree. So let's say I constructed the decision tree. So this is, let's say, an example decision tree created till first level. And I'm going to construct this decision tree up to just first level only. So in machine learning lingo, it is called as a decision stump. So this classifier 1, so far, this classifier 1 is just a single decision stump. OK, now with this stump, I can compute how well am I doing on this training set, which I had 5 examples in total. So I know that the initial data set which I started with has 5 examples, right? So I can evaluate the performance of this decision stump on these 5 examples. So some of these examples will get correctly classified, some won't. So let's say that example 3 gets incorrectly classified, and all other examples. So this example 3, so this is incorrectly classified. And all other examples, they get correctly classified. So the idea behind boosting is that you should give more weight to incorrectly classified examples and give less weight to correctly classified examples. So what we are going to do next is that we are going to build another classifier. We are going to build another classifier where the samples that you pick for this next classifier, those samples will have new weights, and the weights of those samples would be decided by this classifier C1. So what I've just said is you are going to alter the weights of your original samples. So let me just use another. Yeah. Sorry. Just a sec. So I had built a classifier C1, and I tested this classifier back on all the 5 samples in my training set. So what I saw was only 3 was getting classified incorrectly. All other samples that I saw were getting classified correctly. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to update the weight of all the samples here, in the sense that the incorrectly classified sample gets more weight in the next iteration, and all of the remaining correctly classified examples, they get less weight. Okay, so how would you compute this new weight? So initially, as you know, all the samples have a weight of 1 by 5. So initially, all the samples had a weight of 1 by 5. So I am going to update this weight. So to compute this new weight, I need the performance of this classifier. So the performance of this classifier C1 is actually, as you would know, I mean, you would have, you would know how to compute accuracy. So so given these 5 examples, only one was getting classified, say, incorrectly. So in this sense, the performance of my classifier is 1 by 5, or I would say the error of my classifier. So let me just say the error of my classifier is 1 by 5 because it misclassifies one example in my original data set. So so in order to define, basically this idea of boosting uses a special metric to define how well a classifier is doing. So let me just rub this once. So imagine this is the error that we have. So error is like 1 by 5 because one example is incorrectly classified. So in order to compute that metric, which gives us how good a classifier is doing, let me call this metric as performance. Okay. So this performance is actually computed as log of 1 minus error divided by error. Okay. So this is just the way like this metric is computed. This is very specific to you can say your decision tree boosting. Okay. There is also a constant 1 by 2 in front of it. So this is how your classifier will be evaluated. So this number, I think, will come down to probably 0.69 something. Okay. So in essence, what you are saying is that this classifier has a performance of 0.69. So how to use this performance in order to evaluate the next set of weights for these 5 examples? So what we are going to do next is that, as I told that, for all the correctly classified examples, so in your data set, you had, just a second. So in your data set, you had 1, 2, 4, and 5 as your correctly classified examples. And only the third example was incorrectly classified. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to decrease the weights for these incorrectly classified examples, and I'm going to increase the weights of this incorrectly classified examples. So so the new weights for each of the you can say correctly classified examples is computed as whatever the previous weight was. So previous weight into exponent to the power minus of performance. And for incorrectly, just a second. And for incorrectly, sorry. And for incorrectly classified examples, and for incorrectly classified examples, I'm going to increase the weight. See, there is this negative sign here in the performance for correctly classified examples. So that's why whatever the previous weight was, it is going to decrease that weight. And for this case, you are going to have a exponent to the power of performance. So let me just take one example. So if I talk about this sample 3, the new weight would be 1 by 5. Sorry, 1 by 5 into exponent to the power of 0.69. So let's say 0.69 was the performance. So the new weight would be this for sample 3. So for sample 3, this would be the new weight. And for all other samples 1, 2, 4, and 5, the sample weights would be 1 by 5 into exponent to the power minus 0.69. Now, when you build this classifier 2, so I think this will come down to probably close to 0.4, and this will come down to, and these will come down to close to 0.1. So now the new weights for all the samples, I'm just going to write it down. So one has a weight of 0.1. Sorry, this is 2 also has a weight of 0.1. 3 has a weight of 0.4. 4 has a weight of 0.1. And 5 also has a weight of 0.1. Again, the same process. What you're going to do now is that you're going to construct this classifier 2 again with 5 examples. I don't know why this is switching so much. So you're again going to construct classifier 2 with 5 examples. Now, which examples to choose? They will be decided by these weights. So again, construct those buckets. So the first bucket that you would see would start from 0 to 0.1. The next bucket that you would see would start from 0.1 onwards to 0.2. Just add this quantity here. The next bucket would start from 0.2 onwards to 0.6. The next bucket would start from 0.6 to 0.7. And the next bucket that you would see is from 0.7 to 0.8. Okay. Just give me a second. I'll. Okay. Oh, sorry. I made a mistake. Before even creating the buckets, what you do is you normalize these weights. Really sorry. So before even creating the bucket, you are going to normalize these weights. And the process is very simple. So what you're going to do is that you are going to, so the total sum of these weights is 0.8. Because we have to ensure that the buckets should start from 0 and end at 1. So that is the reason we are going to normalize these weights. So this 0.1 would be normalized by 0.1 into 1 by 0.8. Similarly, this next 0.1 would also be normalized between 0.1 by 1 by 0.8. Similarly, you would normalize these weights so that the final result comes between 0 to 1. So let's say this value is V1, this is V2, this is V3, this is some value would be V4, and the next value is V5. Any doubts? Okay. So what we are going to do is that we are now going to create buckets. The very first value that you would see would be from 0 to V1. The next value that you would see from between V1 to V2. The next value would be from V2 to V3. Similarly, V3 to V4 and V4 to V5. So as you would see now that this is starting from 0 and ending at 1. So that was the reason we normalized our weights, because the resultant sum can even be more than 1 or even less than 1. So you have to normalize these weights. So now we are going to build our classifier 2. Use that random number generator again. Sorry. So just give me a second. Just give me a second. Yeah, so use that random number generator again, which generates a number between 0 to 1. Let's say it generates 0.45. Oh, Okay. So basically, you have to follow the same process. It is getting really difficult to write it here. Okay. So the process is still the same. You generate a random number generator. And as you would see is that the bucket for V2 to V3 is now bigger than, I mean, what it was earlier, because the weight of this sample was, it increased several times because it got incorrectly classified by our first classifier. So now there are more chances that this sample 3 would get picked more often in your training set. Any doubts? Let me know if you have any doubts. Okay, so you repeat the same process again, use the random number generator. So let's say if I use the random number generator, then it picks say sample 33142, just assuming. So this is say the new training set for classifier 2. Train the model again. And if you train the model again, you compute the performance again. With the help of that performance, you try to identify which samples were getting classified incorrectly, which were getting correctly classified. Update the weights for both the samples. If they are correctly classified, you decrease their weights. If they are, say, incorrectly classified, you increase their weights. So this process goes on for a finite number of iterations. So just for simplicity's sake, let's say I'm going to construct, say, 10 different classifiers. So basically, sorry. So I'm going to construct classifier up to C10. And each classifier has its own performance. So what you're going to see is that each classifier, or rather, let me say, the ith classifier that you see gives more focus on the incorrectly classified examples that were obtained by classifier Ci-1. So this is the idea of your boosting. And obviously, all those samples which were correctly classified, they are given less weightage. So what you're going to do, if I summarize what this boosting does is, it tries to build successive classifiers where each classifier or each successive classifier gives more weight to the incorrectly classified examples and less weight to the correctly classified examples. So that is the idea of how you use like these different classifiers in the context of boosting. Now, how would you do predictions? Because there are 10 different classifiers. So if the task is a classification task, you can take a majority vote. So if you were doing classification, what you can do is you can simply take a majority vote. If, say, suppose you were doing regression, what you can do is that you can change this performance metric slightly. So in this, the error in regression, let's say we are using average error. So you can substitute average error in this E and compute the performance metric again. And the similar process can be followed. And just one more change that you would have in the context of regression. Now, each classifier, as you know, has its own performance. So some classifier would have a performance of, let's say, 0.6. Some would have a performance of 0.4. And this is in context of the average error. OK. So if you remember, we had discussed that we can actually weight the performance of these classifiers by their individual performances. In order to get a final prediction, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to normalize these weights to ensure that each individual classifier gets weighted by their own performance. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do something like this: alpha 1 times C1 plus alpha 2 times C2. Similarly, alpha 10 times C10. So these alphas that you see, they are nothing but the weights of your individual classifiers. So let's say if Steven predicts the output as 0.2 for a particular sample X, C2 might predict as 0.4, C10 might predict as 0.3. What you're going to do is that you're simply going to multiply these individual predictions by weights. Then you are going to sum it up and then report whatever the final prediction is, which could be say 0.5. So that is how you would use use this boosting concept in the context of regression tasks. Any doubts so far? If there are any doubts, let me know. Any doubts pertaining to boosting? Okay, this is strange that your class doesn't communicate much. Okay, boosting, I think we have covered in much detail, even bagging as well. Okay. So you know what majority voting is. We have also discussed weighted majority voting. Let me, so if you remember when we were discussing the context of bagging, how to combine your predictions. So in the context of classification, I didn't discuss it. So I'm going to tell you today, like how you would combine. So let's say there are 5 different classifiers. One says that there is say 60% probability that this is class 1. One says that this is 70% probability that this is class 2. One says that there is 80% probability that this is class 2. And similarly, each classifier gives own confidence in the context of some class. Okay. Now, majority voting tells us that pick that class whichever has the highest confidence amongst all the classifiers. Okay, so in this case, let's say if this is 80% is having the highest confidence, so I can pick class 2 as the final prediction for my sample X. Now, how would you do it in the context of a weighted scenario? So let us say that your classifier C1. There are, let's say, 3 classes, 1, 2, and 3. So there are 3 classes in total. So classifier 1 for a sample X tells me that it is 0.6% or basically 60% confident that this is class 1. Let's say this is 30% confident that this is class 2, and say 10% confident that this is class 3. Similarly, I have classifier 2, which tells me that it is 70% confident in context of class 2, maybe say 20% confident in context of class 1, and say 10% confident in context of class 3. So for all these classifiers, you have individual confidence scores for each class. So how can I combine it? So one way of combining it is called as Borda count. So how to use it? I'm just going to give you an example to solve it. Okay. So look at these 5 different classifiers. 4 different classifiers: H0, H1, H2, and H3. So these are 4 different classifiers. These classifiers, what they are doing is that they are giving you you can say a score where the score denotes, or rather, let me say, they are giving you a ranking of your classes based on their predictions. So H0 tells me that class 0 has the highest probability, class 1 has the next highest probability, and class 3 has the next highest probability. So it is saying that if I was the person, I would give class 0 as the highest weight, class 1 as the next highest weight, and class 3 as the next highest weight. Similarly, H1 tells me that this one, just give me a second. So H1 tells me that the class 1 has the highest weight. So in this example, there are 4 classes: 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So H1 tells me that class 1 has the highest probability. class 0 has the next highest probability, and class 2 has the third highest probability. So so you can also take the fourth class, which would be 2 here, 3 here, 2 again here, and 1 here. So I mean, you can also do that, but I mean, in this example, we are only taking the top 3 classes. Okay, we are only taking the top 3 classes to predict the final prediction. So now what you are going to do is that you are going to say the class which has the highest probability gets 3 votes. The class which has the highest probability, it gets 3 votes. The class which has the next highest probability gets 2 votes. And the class which has the third highest probability gets 1 vote. And now what you do is that you simply count the number of votes in favor of each class. So if you look at it here, so if I look at class 0, so class 0 has the highest probability by H0. So it gets 3 votes. If you look at the classifier H1, 0 has the second highest probability, so it gets 2 votes again. In the context of H2, it again gets 2 votes. In the context of H3, it again gets 2 votes. So the total is 9. So in total, your class 0 gets a total of 9 votes. Similarly, if you can compute the number of votes for class 1, class 2, and class 3, they have been computed here. So class 1 gets a total number of votes as 8. Class 2 gets a total number of votes as 2. And similarly, class 3 gets a total number of votes as 5. So whichever class gets the highest number of votes, that is your final prediction. So in this case, class 0 would be your final prediction. Now imagine, what if you were doing majority? If you were doing majority, you would see that, I mean, just look at the first column here. So if you were doing majority, you will be only looking at the best predictions, right? So in this case, you would be predicting the output as 1 and not 0. Why? Because H1 and H2, they both agree on class 1. And this is like, and 1 is like that class which is being predicted most number of times. If you just used, I mean, the probability of the highest class only. So in case of majority, you get class 1 as the, I mean, final predicted class. If you use this border count, so this particular method is called as border count. So if you use this voting method, you would get the output as class 0. So I hope this border count is clear to you. If not, let me know. Otherwise, I'll proceed. Okay. Now, there are a few other ways to construct an ensemble. So let me just switch on to. Okay. So one way is called as stacking. So I'm just going to finish ensemble learning today. So stacking is another way how you can actually merge the predictions of different classifiers together. So let's say that you are having, oh, sorry. Let me just open another app. Okay, so let's say there are, say, 5 different classifiers. Let me call them as your base classifiers. So the concept of stacking denotes that you are going to merge the predictions of these different classifiers in a stacked fashion. Okay, so let me explain what this stack is with the help of an example. One more thing before that, another name of stacking is also called a stack generalization. This is just another name for it. Okay, so let us start with like how you would stack these classifiers one by one. Okay, so let's say that you have, say, a data set. So this is your original data set. One key thing to note is that all of these individual base classifiers, uh, they are more or less different. I mean, in the context of like bagging and boosting, the type of the model stays the same. So if you are using, say, decision trees for classifier 1, so in boosting, C2 would also be a decision tree, C3 would also be a decision tree, basically a decision stump, because they are weak learners. So in the case of stacking, the idea is a little different. You are trying to combine different types of base classifiers. So one could be a neural network, one could be, say, a decision tree, one could be support vector machine. So basically the architectures and types are different. Okay. So let's say I have a given data set, and these are partitions. So this is partition 1, this is partition 2, these are partition 3, partition 4, partition 5. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to construct these individual base classifiers in the same way as I did with cross-validated committees. So if you remember, classifier 1 uses first partition P1 as the test set, and all other partitions from P2 to P5 in my training set. Okay. Similarly, if I talk about classifier 2, it will be using P2 as my test set, and all other classifiers from, so basically P1, P3, P4, and P5 in my training set. So I hope you have a generalized idea of how each classifier will be built. Okay, so what now? So the next step is you use the, let's say, so we used P2 to P5 for building classifier 1. So let's say I am going to use classifier 1 on this sample, on this partition 1, basically the test set, to see the predictions. So this will give me certain predictions. So I know the predictions of all the samples in this partition 1. Similarly, if I look at classifier 2, I have the predictions for all the samples in partition 2. Similarly, if you look at classifier 3, I will have it for P3. For classifier 4, I will have it for P4. So basically, each individual classifier that you see gives me a prediction of one such partition. So I'm looking at the predictions of the test set only. Okay, and remember, all of these classifiers are still weak learners. Okay, these are still weak learners, so their performance is just better than a chance. Basically, if you were talking about a binary classification scenario, their performance is better than 50%. Okay. So similarly, C5 would give us for P5. Okay. So this is similar to what we have done for cross-validation committees. So what is the difference in stacking here? So in stacking, what you do is that you use these predictions. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use the predictions on P1, the predictions on P2, the predictions on P3, the predictions on P4, and predictions on P5. Now to construct a new classifier, and I'm going to call this classifier as, let's say, C6. This C6 in machine learning lingo, it is also called as a meta model. So basically, this meta model works on top of the predictions of the first level classifiers. So basically, the classifiers 1 to 5 that we built, the base classifiers, these are, you can say, level 0 classifiers. And the next level that you will see is the meta classifier. So what you can say is that this meta model will now use the predictions as your input. So I know the predictions of P1, P2, P3, P4, P5. I also know the actual outputs, right? Because for each, because I have the training data set with me, I also know the actual outputs of P1. Similarly, I also know actual outputs of P2. I also know actual outputs of P3, P4, and P5 as well. So now what you do is that for this meta model, you use P1, P2, P3, P4, and P5, the predicted versions as your input, and the outputs as you already know from your training set. Train this model again, and this is how the final prediction would come. So in essence, what you have done is that there are 5 base classifiers. Whatever these 5 base classifiers predict, you feed it to another model C6, and now this C6 does your final prediction. This meta model C6 does your final prediction. So this is called as stacking. So basically you have stacked this model C6 on top of these 5 base classifiers. I hope this is clear. If not, let me know. Or anything, even in general, like even the prior topics, if they are not clear, please let me know. I can discuss them again. All right. So I hope this stacking is clear, like how you built each of these base classifiers and combine their predictions in the final model. There is one thing which researchers have tried, and it has helped them. I mean, in the context of stacking, there is one more thing which people have tried. So if you remember, in while building C1, we left out P1 as the test set. Similarly, while building C2, we left out P2 as the test set. And whatever predictions came out on P1, we used it here to train. Whatever predictions came out on P2, we used it here to train. What people have done is, so you can imagine, let's say there are 3 features. Let me call these features as X1, X2, and X3. So what people have tried is that for building the meta model C6, in addition to using these predictions, so let me just say that there is another prediction for this sample one, or let me just call it as f of c. And there is a y also, basically. So f of c represents predictions, and x represent, sorry, y represents, so this is y. Y represents true outputs, basically given in your data set. So so let's say if this is partition 1, so basically this would be FC1. If this is partition 2, you would have FC2. Okay, so for building this meta model C6, what people have tried is that they have also given. So if you remember, we discussed that if you want to train this C6, you would be training it as basically FC1. I would say FC1 merged with, or rather, let me use a very generic notation. So f of C1 to 5, basically predictions of all the different classifiers. And then I will use y as the outputs from my training set. So this is what we were doing originally. So these are my inputs, and these are my outputs for C6. What people have tried is that in addition to giving FC15, you also give the original training set, which is X1, X2, X3. See, I can also append the original features in my training set, right? So now this whole thing is my input and y is the output. So this is one change that people have tried, and this works brilliantly, or I would say much better than if you just use the predictions for training this C6. Okay. Another thing which people have tried is that So after you have constructed these models C1, C2, C3, C4, and C5 by leaving one partition for the test set. So that is one phase. So let me just call it. So let's say there are C1, C2, C3, C4, C5. So if you remember, what we do is we leave one partition as it is for the test set, and we take predictions on that, and then build C6. So let's say you have built C6 using say this or this. So you started with C1, left partition 1 as it is. From the predictions of P1, you built C6. From the predictions of P2, you built C6, so on and so forth. Okay. So once you have built this C6, afterwards, what you do is that each of these classifiers, they are retrained with your original data set. See, in our original data set, I have 5 partitions, right? Initially, I took 4 partitions to train one of these classifiers. Now I'll be using all of those partitions for the training of each individual classifier. So in phase 1, what I did was I left one partition and then gave the predictions to C6, which served as the input for my model C6, right? Now in phase 2, what you are going to do is that once C6 is built, you train these classifiers C1, C2, C3, C4, C5 again with the entire training set. And now what you do is that, so if so remember, each of these individual classifiers, they have different, I mean, they are different models. One may be a neural net, one may be say decision trees, one may be support vector machines, so on and so forth. So their predictions can differ if you give the original data set. That is the reason you can give the original data set again. Okay. So now what you do is that, so if let's say if there is a sample X for which you want to do predictions, so you pass it to C1, you pass it to C2, C3, C4, and C5, you'll get some predictions, right? So these predictions will then be fed to C6, and this C6 will now give you the final output. So this I hope is clear to you. Just there are, I mean, 2 tweaks. One is that you can input the features of your original data set along with the predictions of the previous stage classifiers for building this meta model C6. And after you have built this C6, you can also retrain these individual classifiers again. So this is one tweak that people have tried, and it tends to work better than, I mean, doing the general form of stacking. Okay. There is one more ensemble learning scenario. That ensemble learning scenario is called as a hierarchical mixture of experts. So this is like our final ensemble learning model. This I'm going to discuss today. And with this model, I think ensemble learning would be complete. Okay, so this also uses different classifiers. So similar to stacking, the models are actually different. So just remember, in case of bagging boosting, the model type, they remain the same. You use the same model for building different classifiers. The architecture basically stays the same. So if you're going to use a neural net model, the architecture of that model across all the different classifiers, it is going to stay the same. Only that the training set would differ in bagging and boosting. However, in stacking, each base classifier is usually different. Okay. Same is the case in hierarchical mixture of experts. The models are different. So let's say these C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, they are individual classifiers. You can build them with you can say the way we used cross-validated committees to construct these classifiers. You can use the strategy leave one out partition for the test set. So if there are 5 partitions, you take 4 partitions for training, 1 partition for testing. Now, the difference between hierarchical mixture of experts and stacking is I would say there is just a slight difference. So what you do is that, So the predictions of these models is combined in a, I would say, a gated fashion. So you can imagine C1 has a weight G1, C2 has a weight G2, C3 has a weight G3, C4 has a weight G4, C5 has a weight G5. Okay, so basically what you're going to do is that G1, C1 plus G2, C2 up to G5, C5 gives me the final prediction. So this is like the final output that you get. Now you can ask me like how it is different from the soft voting scenario, which we discussed previously in the, I think in the very first session that I had. So how it is different from that here. So if you remember, in the case of soft voting, these weights G1, G2 up to G5, they were set by the performance of the classifier. Okay, set using the performance of the classifier. Okay. So basically, the weight of classifier 1, which is G1, it was computed by classifier 1's performance. Similarly, G2 was computed from classifier 2's performance. This is slightly different. So G1 here is a learnable parameter. So I mean, if you have studied neural networks by now, you can imagine that G1 is a weight of an edge. So it's the same thing. So in order to determine these weights, what you're going to do is that you're going to, so if you look at this final output, so this final out, so assume that I'm going to do regression. Okay, so assume a regression task. So for a regression task, the prediction is, so if you remember, how do you do predictions in a regression task? And I'm going to just write the loss function for regression. So let's say our loss function is squared error. Okay, so squared error is nothing but prediction minus actual values whole square. So this is nothing but squared error. You can take mean squared error. You can take, say, root mean squared error. You can also take absolute loss. This is all up to you. What I'm going to, I mean, I'm just going to demonstrate how this gating, basically how this gating mechanism works and how these parameters G1, G2 up to G5, they are determined. Okay, so if you look at this prediction would be computed as G1, C1 plus G2, C2 up to G5, C5. Basically, C1 is nothing but basically the output that C1 predicts. C2 is what the output that C2 predicts, and C5 is what the output that C5 predicts. And this is the actual values of the sample which are given to you, and this is whole square. This is, I hope this is clear. Now, if you want to determine what G1 is, what you do is that you, I mean, differentiate this loss function with respect to G1. I hope you have derived the equation of, have you derived the equation for the weights of linear regression? Students, if you are still there, it would be better if you interact with me. Guys, have you derived the equation for linear regression? A yes or no would suffice. Anyone?
Sir, we have studied its formula.
Okay, but you know how to, so assume that you are doing a linear regression on, say, two-dimensional data set. So if the data set is two-dimensional, how many parameters would you have?
So can you repeat?
So given that you have a training data set which has two features, basically there are two dimensions in your data set. All I'm asking is, if you do say linear regression with these two features, how many weights you would have to determine? How many coefficients would you determine?
Two coefficients.
Three, not two. There is one bias term as well, right? So if you remember, like if you do even a one-dimensional regression, basically if the input is a single entity, you determine the slope and also the constant value, right? The bias term, the intercept term. So the idea is, leveraged from there. Just like how you determine these different weights in linear regression, you differentiate it and equate it to 0. You get some linear equations and then you solve for each individual parameter there. Similar is the case with like G1, G2, and G5. They are individual parameters. You differentiate it, equate it to 0. You'll get the best values for G1. Similarly, you differentiate it with respect to G2. You will get the best value for G2. So that is the idea of how you would use hierarchical mixture of experts. So this is it for today. If you have any questions, we can discuss it now. If there are no questions, I'm done with the session. From tomorrow onwards, or I think tomorrow is a holiday. So whenever we meet next, we are going to discuss principal component analysis. If I'm able to finish principal component analysis, I think I would be. I am going to give you a very simple task. This is just for your revision. So do this thing for me. You have to figure out. So given that you have two parallel lines. So this I would need in some. I'm not going to derive it. I think you would have already done it in maybe 11th or 12th. Let's say given that there are two parallel lines. All I'm asking is what is the distance between them? Find the distance between them. OK. So if there are two parallel lines, what is the distance between two parallel lines? So this is the first task that you have to, revise. See how you are able to figure out the distance between two parallel lines. You can treat it as a mathematical numerical. The next task that you have to do. So given a line and a point, find the distance between them. OK. So you can use Euclidean distance for computing the distance. I hope you know what Euclidean distance is. OK. So these two things I want you to study before you come for the next class. It won't take more than 5 to 10 minutes. OK. If you don't remember them, go to Google, give it a go. You'll be able to figure out the answers. OK. Anything else if you want to discuss, you can stay back. If you understood everything, you can leave the session.
So this is in 2D plane, right?
You can assume it to be in a ND plane as well. That doesn't really matter. You can always extend it to n dimensions, but for now you can assume it to be in a 2D plane.
Yes.
This would be really helpful in support vector machines. Otherwise, you will not understand the optimization problem for support vector machines if these two things are not clear to you. So I am going to start from this point onwards. So I'm going to make a statement that so basically I'm going to tell you right now that support vector machines try to maximize the distance between two parallel lines. So I'm going to start from there itself. So you should know what is the basically formula of the distance between two parallel lines. So you should know it beforehand. I'm not going to derive it there. OK. All right, guys. So this is it from my side. If you have any questions, you can stay back and discuss with me. Otherwise, you can leave the session. So take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.